Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of the Moon Garden, I'd love to know where in the world you are watching from tonight, and what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up, let's begin. The night was quiet in the way ancient stories are quiet, not empty, but listening. Somewhere between the breath of dusk and the silence of dawn, a lone traveler walked along a road that shimmered faintly beneath his feet. No lanterns burned there. No stars guided his way. And yet the ground itself seemed to remember the moon. Each step released a pulse of light, soft as a sigh. Dust rose, glimmering like falling constellations. The traveler paused to watch them drift, their glow fading into the cool air. He smiled, not from joy, but recognition. He had seen this light before. Not in any dream he could recall, but in stories told long ago beside warm fires and colder nights. A tale spoken by an elder whose voice trembled like the flame beside it. There is a path that only appears to those who carry silence kindly. A silver road made from the moon's forgotten tears. It leads to a garden where the light itself hums lullabies, and sleep becomes a kind of remembering. Most would have dismissed it as a tale told to children too wakeful to rest. But for the traveler, those words had stayed. They lingered long after childhood had drifted away like smoke. And now here he was, walking the shimmer of that very legend. The air was cool, but not cold. It felt aware. Every sound seemed softer than it should be, as though the world had drawn in its breath to listen. Somewhere nearby, water moved without making a sound. He followed the invisible melody, the faint rhythm of ripples he could feel more than hear. Each step made the road pulse gently underfoot, the silver dust rising, falling, settling again like sighs returning home. The traveler carried little, a small pack, a smooth stone he had found as a boy, and a flute carved from pale wood. He did not know why he had brought the flute. It had not made a sound in years, but something about tonight felt as if even silence could sing. As he walked, he began to notice faint shapes on either side of the road. Not trees, not rocks, something softer. Pillars of faint light, standing tall and thin, like the memory of lanterns. They flickered gently, casting shadows that moved in patterns too delicate to follow. If he looked at them directly, they dimmed. If he looked away, they seemed to lean toward him, curious, kind, as if whispering in a language made of moonlight. He whispered back, not words, just breath, a greeting. The pillars pulsed in reply, and the road brightened slightly beneath his feet. He could no longer tell how long he'd been walking. Time felt like something that belonged to another world. Perhaps this road did not measure time in hours, but in heartbeats, or in moments of quiet wonder. The scent of jasmine drifted past him, sweet and faint. Then another scent he couldn't quite name. It reminded him of rain that had never fallen, of mornings that had never come. He inhaled deeply, and with each breath, his thoughts slowed. He remembered things he hadn't thought of in years. The rhythm of his mother's voice, the hush of distant waves at night, the way candlelight had once made him believe walls could dream. All of it returning now, gently, without warning, like echoes waking from sleep. A faint sound reached him. At first he thought it was wind. Then, no, it was humming, low, tender, almost human. But it came from everywhere. From the road, the pillars, the air itself. The sound rose and fell like the tide, each note dissolving into another. It wasn't music in any usual sense. It was as if the night itself was remembering a song too old to be sung aloud. The traveler slowed, feeling the hum in his chest. It wasn't just sound, it was vibration. gentle and familiar, as though his heartbeat had found something to harmonize with. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the world seemed softer. The edges of things had blurred, melting into one another like water in moonlight. He realized then that he wasn't alone. Shapes moved ahead, gliding slowly across the path. They weren't people, not exactly. They looked like memories given form-soft silhouettes of travelers from long ago. Some holding lanterns made of light, others carrying shadows cupped gently in their palms. As they passed, none spoke, but each inclined their head in quiet acknowledgement, as if to say, "You found it too." He wanted to ask where they were going, but his voice would have felt too loud for this place. Instead, he simply followed, letting their fading trails of glow guide him forward. The road began to narrow, winding between tall ridges of pale stone. Moonlight gathered there like mist. Each rock glowed faintly, etched with markings that looked both written and grown spirals, stars, flowing lines that pulsed in rhythm with the hum around him. The traveler reached out to touch one. The stone was warm olive. When his fingers brushed it, the hum deepened slightly, and a faint image shimmered across its surface. A hand, and open and waiting. It wasn't his hand. It was someone else's, a reflection from another time. Then, just as softly, the image faded, leaving only the warmth behind. The path climbed upward, curving gently toward what looked like the edge of the sky. But as he reached the crest, he saw that the horizon was not an ending, it was a beginning. Far below, stretching out like an ocean of light, was a field that shimmered as if the stars themselves had fallen there. Silver blossoms bloomed in waves, their petals flickering with breath-like motion. And somewhere among them, a single stream glowed brighter than all the rest, a river of moonlight winding towards something unseen. The traveler stopped. The hum grew louder here, yet softer too, like the earth whispering through velvet. He knelt, pressed his hand to the ground. It felt warm, alive, as if the road itself had a heartbeat. He looked up at the sky, still dark, but alive with invisible movement. It was not a void. It was a veil. And behind that veil, the moon watched. Not cold, not distant, but patient, as if it had been waiting for him all along. A pulse of silver rolled across the ground. The blossoms far below swayed in unison, like a sea responding to some unseen tide. And then he heard it, a sound more clear than any before. A voice, neither male nor female, singing only one phrase, softly, as if speaking directly to his bones. "You walk on what was once our sorrow, and it has turned to light." The traveler froze. The air trembled. The pillars of faint light bowed. He did not understand the words, not with the mind, but somewhere deeper, in the space where memory sleeps. Tears gathered, not from sadness, but from the recognition of beauty that does not demand meaning. He whispered back, his voice unsteady but warm, "I remember." And for a moment, everything around him seemed to pause, as if the world itself had sighed in relief. The hum returned, gentler now. The figures ahead faded into the light. The road widened once more, spilling into a soft plain where moonlight pooled like water. There in the distance, he saw the faint outline of an archway woven from vines that gleamed like threads of glass. It shimmered, alive, inviting, half in this world, half in another. And though his body longed for rest, something in him, the old child still dreaming beside the fire, knew he must keep walking. Beyond that arch, the air seemed to hum in a rhythm that felt almost like breathing. A rhythm that called to something deep within him. A rhythm that whispered of a garden that sang to the moon. He took a slow breath. lifted his foot, and stepped toward the gate. The archway shimmered like a mirage born of breath and moonlight. From a distance it seemed fragile, something a sigh could scatter. But as the traveler drew closer, he realized it wasn't made of glass or vine. It was woven from threads of liquid light, each strand pulsing softly, alive with memory. Tiny drops of luminescence drifted from its surface and vanished before touching the ground, as though the air itself were drinking the glow. And behind the arch he could see a faint distortion of space folded within itself, like a reflection trying to remember what it once was. He paused at the edge, listening. The hum of the road had changed. It was slower now, deeper, as if it were waiting for him to match its rhythm. He took one step forward. The moment his foot crossed the first thread of light, the air trembled. Not violently, but tenderly, like the hush that falls when a lullaby begins. The arch did not open in any ordinary sense. It rippled, and the world behind it seemed to breathe. A wind moved through, though he could not feel it. Only his thoughts shifted, a strange calm washed over him, a stillness that was neither heavy nor empty. He thought of the elder again, that voice from his childhood, the one who had said, "The moon remembers what we forget." He had never understood what that meant, until now. Here the air felt filled with remembering. Not just his own, but the memory of all things. Each glimmer in the air carried something, a scent of old laughter, a trace of tears shed centuries ago, the warmth of stories never told. They brushed against his skin, gentle and curious, as though welcoming him into their long, quiet dream. He looked down. His reflection shimmered on the surface beneath his feet, but the surface wasn't stone or water. It was light, fluid, endless, stretching in every direction like the quietest sea. Every ripple of his movement sent circles of glow outward, touching the air and then fading like sighs released into sleep. He knelt, letting his fingertips graze it. It was warm, but not with heat. It felt like memory, that warmth one feels when recalling something gentle and lost. He closed his eyes. The hum deepened again. Now he could hear faint whispers hidden beneath the tone, soft voices that did not speak in words, but in the language of rhythm. One sounded like rain falling in another world, another like breath drawn between tears, another like laughter drifting across an unseen sea. And beneath it all, one note held everything together, a constant pulse of the moon's heartbeat. The traveler opened his eyes. The arch behind him was gone. The silver road stretched onward, but the world around him had shifted. The pillars of light were taller here, their forms more defined. They resembled trees now tall and narrow, their leaves like translucent glass petals. When the faint wind brushed through them, they rang softly, each tone blending with the hum beneath his feet. He walked slowly, his hands brushing the glowing leaves as he passed. They were cool, and when he touched one, it released a shimmer that danced through the air like a memory awakening. The shimmer formed faint shapes, a hand held out, a face smiling, a fragment of a place he had never been. It was as though the tree had shown him a dream it once caught in its branches. Further ahead, the road began to curve, spiraling downward toward a low valley where light pooled like mist. At its center stood a single figure. Not shadow, not light, but something between the two. The traveler approached cautiously. The figure moved slowly, turning to face him, its form shifting with every breath. Sometimes tall, sometimes small, sometimes many shapes at once. But its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed steady and calm, like two small moons suspended in water. When it spoke, its voice sounded like a blend of wind and memory. "You've walked far, though distance here means nothing. What you seek is ahead. But tell me, What do you remember of the sky? The traveler hesitated. He looked upward. The sky was vast, a deep ocean of soft silver, but he could not recall the last time he had seen it truly dark, filled with stars. I remember, he said slowly, that the sky once listened, that it held the dreams of those who dared to look up. The figure nodded. Then you may pass. The garden blooms only for those who still listen. And as the figure faded, its outline became thousands of small glowing petals that drifted upward, joining the invisible current of light above. The valley brightened. The hum grew softer again, becoming a rhythm the traveler could almost hum along with. He followed it, letting the sound lead him like a lantern. The ground beneath him began to change. The smooth surface of light gave way to something more textured, soft moss, velvet under his feet, glowing faintly blue. It was cool and alive. Each step made a delicate sound, as if the earth were breathing beneath him. In the distance, the faint shimmer of water appeared again, but this time it wasn't a pool. It was a stream, thin, winding, flowing with liquid moonlight. He knelt beside it, cupping his hands to scoop the light. It moved like silk between his fingers, leaving traces of glow on his skin that faded slowly, as though sinking into him. He brought his hands to his lips, and though he did not drink, the air tasted faintly of sweetness, like milk and rain. Somewhere far off, a bell chimed, soft, low, and perfect. It echoed across the valley, and the sound seemed to bloom into colors, silver, indigo, pale gold. The air shimmered with their hues, and the traveler realized that sound here was not separate from light. They were the same language, spoken in two voices. He sat beside the stream, watching the light flow past his fingers. For the first time in many nights, his mind was quiet. He thought of the life he had left behind, the noise, the endless reaching, the way people hurried even through their own dreams. Here, there was only stillness, no urgency, only the endless, patient rhythm of existence that asked for nothing in return. He leaned back against the glowing moss. The hum seemed to cradle him now. He closed his eyes, and the road began to replay itself in his thoughts, the shimmering dust, the whispering pillars, the echo of the figure who had asked about the sky. He realized then that every step he had taken was a part of a song. Each sound, each breath, each silence had been perfectly placed, woven into a melody too vast for a single mind to hear. And he wondered, had the road been singing him forward all along? Had it chosen him, not for who he was, but for the quiet he carried within? When he opened his eyes again, the stream beside him had changed. It had grown wider, and from its surface rose thin tendrils of light, curling upward like vines seeking the moon. They wrapped around each other, weaving themselves into an arch knot unlike the first one he had crossed. But this one was softer, gentler, as if shaped by the water's dream itself. He stood, and as he approached, he saw that the arch reflected not his face, but the night sky filled with stars that pulsed softly in time with his heart. A path of petals stretched beyond it, drifting slowly across the glowing stream. He knew this was where the next journey began. But before stepping through, he turned back once, looking at the silver road fading behind him. The pillars of light bowed slightly, as if bidding farewell. He whispered a quiet thank you, his words dissolving into mist. The sound of his voice was carried upward, caught by unseen hands, and released into the hum a small note added to an eternal song. He turned back toward the arch of water and stars. Beyond it, he could see faint shapes swaying in the distance, flowers taller than trees, glowing softly as if breathing. The air pulsed with lullaby tones, and though he could not yet hear their words, he could feel them in his bones. He stepped forward, and as his foot touched the first petal, it lit up beneath him. Then another, and another, until the path itself became a ribbon of light leading deeper into the valley. The arch shimmered once more, ripples of silver crossing its surface, and when he passed through, a wave of calm swept over him, so pure it silenced thought. It felt like stepping into the pause between two heartbeats, a place where even time bowed its head. Behind him, the silver road dimmed, its light sinking gently back into the earth. Ahead, the air glowed with the faint hum of unseen blossoms, their music threading through the mist like memory. He looked up one last time before the path bent out of sight. The moon hung low now, vast and full, its surface trembling with faint motion as though it were smiling. He smiled back, not knowing why. Maybe because it felt right to return the gesture. Maybe because some part of him knew that all travelers were simply reflections walking toward the same light. The hum grew clearer. He could feel it vibrating softly through his chest, through his breath, through the very bones of the world. It was not just sound, it was the rhythm of belonging. He walked on. And as the glow deepened, as the first silver petals brushed against his hands, the traveler whispered to himself, not in fear, not in wonder, but in peace. I have found the road that dreams when I cannot. And with that, the silver path opened wide before him, leading toward the garden that sings. The traveler woke before dawn. The stars were fading, melting into the soft gray of a world still half asleep. The air held the chill of forgotten dreams, the kind that leave faint impressions but no memory. Somewhere nearby, water trickled, and the faint melodic hum he had heard the night before still echoed in the distance. He rose slowly, brushing dew from his sleeves, and followed the faint path of silver that glimmered through the tall grass. The moon was gone now, but its afterglow lingered, a whisper of light guiding him toward the heart of the garden. As he walked, the air began to change. Each breath felt like inhaling music, the low resonance of something alive beneath the soil. The traveler could almost feel the vibrations through his boots, a subtle, rhythmic pulsing, like a great heart beating far underground. Then he reached the gates. They weren't made of iron or stone, but of twisted branches and moon vines, pale as bone and veined with soft blue luminescence. The vines trembled gently, as if sensing his presence. With a low, organic sigh, the gates parted. He stepped through. The garden inside was unlike anything that belonged to daylight. The traveler found himself surrounded by a landscape of spectral beauty. Flowers of liquid silver, translucent trees whose leaves shimmered like droplets of morning dew caught in a frozen dance. The soil beneath his feet was dark as velvet, and soft light pulsed through it, as though the roots themselves carried rivers of moonlight. Everywhere there was sound, not loud but constant. A gentle hum, the same lullaby-like vibration that had haunted his dreams, emanated from the blossoms themselves. Each flower sang its own note, and together they formed a harmony so tender it almost ached. He bent closer to one of the blooms, a white glowing flower shaped like a crescent moon. When he brushed its petal, it shivered and released a faint sigh that rippled across the garden. The surrounding flowers responded, adjusting their hum, weaving a new melody into the air. It was as though the garden was speaking in song. The traveler wandered deeper. The moonlight here had substance. It clung to his hair, dripped from the leaves, and gathered in shimmering pools. In one of these pools, he saw something move, light shifting into form. It was a woman, or at least something shaped like one. Her body was woven from the same silvery threads as the moonvines, her eyes deep pools of reflected starlight. Her gown shimmered as though made from the surface of still water. Yet she was not human. She had an otherworldly stillness, the grace of something that belonged to the night. "You have come," she said softly. Her voice was not heard but felt, a vibration through the air, echoing through the hum of the garden. The traveler stepped closer. "What is this place?" She tilted her head slightly, as if studying him through centuries of silence. "This is the moon garden," she said, "a sanctuary for forgotten dreams. The light that nourishes these petals is not from the sky, but from memory, from longing, from the quiet songs the world forgets to hear." Her words lingered like mist. The traveler felt them settle into him, filling the spaces where wonder used to live. He followed her through a path lined with luminous flowers. As they walked, he noticed strange symbols etched into the ground, spirals, crescents, and runes that shimmered faintly when stepped upon. The woman paused beside one. "Each symbol," she said, "is a story. Every petal in this garden blooms from a dream once lost. When the moon rises full, it gathers the unspoken, songs left unfinished, wishes whispered into sleep, and brings them here to bloom." The traveler knelt, tracing one of the carvings with his fingers. The lines were warm to the touch. "And the hum?" he asked. "The hum," she whispered, "is the sound of those dreams remembering themselves." She turned her face toward the horizon, where a faint silver mist was rising. Long ago, when the moon was young, it sang to the earth. Each night, its voice would drift down and awaken seeds hidden in the soil, seeds of memory, seeds of music. But the world grew louder. The people forgot to listen. The moon fell silent, and her songs turned to dust. Her voice softened, until travelers like you began to find their way here again. The traveler felt something stir in his chest, a recognition he couldn't explain, as if a forgotten part of himself had been waiting for her words. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Because you still dream," she said simply. They came to a small clearing at the center of the garden. In its heart stood a tree, massive, ancient, and glowing softly from within. Its trunk shimmered with streaks of silver light, and its leaves were translucent, like glass kissed by moonbeams. From its branches hung hundreds of luminous fruit, each pulsing with a soft hum. The woman raised her hand, and the hum deepened, harmonizing with her voice. "This is the lunalith tree. It grows from the moon's first tear. Each fruit holds a memory of the earth's dreaming, moments of peace, sorrow, love, or loss. When the wind passes through them, they sing back what the world has forgotten." She plucked one of the fruits gently and held it out. "Listen." The traveler pressed it to his ear. He heard a lullaby, soft, wordless, but achingly familiar, like the melody his mother once hummed when he was a child, when the world still felt safe. His eyes burned, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe. "How can this be?" he whispered. "The garden remembers," the woman said. "It holds what hearts cannot." As they stood beneath the lunalith tree, the moon, though invisible beyond dawn, seemed to glow again within the garden's borders. The flowers lifted their faces, their petals trembling with song. But then, the melody shifted. The harmony fractured into dissonance, a trembling discord that rippled across the air. The woman's expression changed. The soft serenity in her eyes turned to unease. "What's happening?" the traveler asked. She touched the trunk of the tree. The light within it flickered, like a heartbeat faltering. "The moonlight weakens," she murmured. "Something has stirred in the waking world, a shadow that feeds on silence." He frowned. "A shadow?" She nodded slowly. "Every dream has its echo, every song, its silence. When the moon's music fades, that silence grows strong. It comes to devour the melodies, to still the hum that keeps the garden alive." The traveler looked around. The air felt heavier now. The soft humming had turned uneven, as if the flowers themselves were holding their breath. "What can be done?" he asked. The woman turned to him, her form shimmering like mist about to vanish. "There is a key," she said, "a lost chord hidden within the garden. If you can find it and play it before the next dawn, The harmony will be restored. If not, she looked toward the darkening edges of the sky. The garden will fall silent forever. The traveler felt the weight of her words settle upon him. Silenced forever. The thought filled him with a strange sorrow. He didn't fully understand why, but it felt as though this place had always been part of him, like a memory half remembered. "I'll find it," he said. The woman smiled faintly. "Then follow the hum. It will lead you." As she faded into the light, her final whisper lingered in the air. "Remember, music is not made by sound alone. It lives in the spaces between." When she was gone, the traveler stood alone beneath the lunalith tree. The garden around him shimmered faintly, the hum now trembling between harmony and decay. He looked toward the silvery paths that wound into the distance, each one pulsing with faint rhythm, as though marking the beat of an unseen song. He took a breath and stepped forward. As he walked, he noticed that the flowers now seemed to respond to him differently. Their hums rose and fell in tempo with his heartbeat. The air itself seemed alive, watching him, waiting. And in that strange awareness, the traveler began to understand. The garden wasn't merely a place. It was alive, a being composed of melody, light, and memory. To move through it was to wander through a living song. Each step was a note, each breath a chord, each heartbeat a rhythm. The hum deepened as he moved deeper into the moonlight's maze, following a sound that seemed both near and impossibly distant, something calling to him from the heart of the silence. The traveler followed the hum deeper into the moonlit labyrinth. The further he went, the more the air thickened with strange music layers of tones overlapping like echoes of distant dreams. Some were gentle, like raindrops on glass. Others throbbed low and deep, a pulse that seemed to come from beneath the ground. He soon realized that the paths were changing. The vines shifted when he wasn't looking, rerouting the trail, rearranging the garden's design. The hum grew louder, almost insistent. It was no longer the lullaby of peace, but a plea, an urging rhythm. He came upon a stone archway. Its surface shimmered faintly, engraved with crescent patterns that pulsed with a heartbeat of their own. As he stepped through, the hum turned to a whisper. And beyond the arch, everything changed. The world seemed to tilt. The silver hues dimmed, replaced by shades of muted blue and gray. The flowers no longer glowed instead. They cast shadows that shimmered and moved independently of their stems. The air was colder here, still but watchful. It was the far side of the moon garden, the side that the moonlight forgot. He felt eyes on him, not from creatures or spirits, but from the garden itself, from the petals that tilted ever so slightly toward him, from the leaves that swayed though there was no breeze. The hum was gone now, replaced by silence so dense it hummed in his bones. A shape moved at the edge of his vision. He turned quickly, nothing, but then again, a flicker, a darker patch of darkness. He whispered, "Who's there?" A reply came, not in words but through vibration, like the sound of a deep string plucked somewhere within his chest. It wasn't pleasant. It resonated wrong. Then it spoke, a voice of pure absence. The moon forgets, the dreams decay, the silence remains. He could feel it moving closer, an outline barely visible, a ripple in the still air. The traveler's skin prickled. "You're the shadow," he said quietly. The figure tilted its formless head. "Not shadow," it murmured. "Memory undone. When the song stops, I begin." The traveler stepped back, heart pounding. "You're the silence she spoke of. I am what grows where music dies." The silence swelled like a tide. Around him, petals began to wither. Their faint light extinguished. Their humming ceased. The garden's colors dimmed. The traveler clenched his fists. "Why destroy it?" The voice responded almost tenderly. "Not destroy. Complete. Every note must end. Every dream must fall quiet." Its presence pressed against him, Not seen but felt, a weight against the chest, a hand made of absence. He gasped as the hum within his heart faltered, his pulse slowing as if being lulled to stillness. But then, faintly, he heard something. A single flower behind him, small, fragile, glowing faintly with silver light, began to hum. Its note trembled but held. The traveler turned to it and, without thinking, reached out. The flower responded. Its hum grew stronger, and suddenly he understood. This was not a battle of force, but of resonance. The garden's life came from connection, the harmony between sound and silence, presence and stillness. The shadow fed on emptiness, but it could not endure a song remembered. He took a deep breath and began to hum back. The note was weak at first, untrained, raw, but it grew as he focused. His voice met the flower's tone and merged with it. A faint shimmer passed through the air, breaking the heavy silence. The shadow hissed, its form warping. "You remember," it said, the sound sharp as ice. "You should not." The traveler held the note. "Then you'll have to make me forget." The ground beneath him pulsed, the soil turning to liquid shadow. Vines of darkness coiled upward, grasping at his legs. The hum faltered. He stumbled, but the flower beside him sang louder, joined by another and another. Each bloom began to vibrate, reawakening in waves of soft moonlight. The air trembled with gathering harmony. The traveler could hear multiple notes now, high and low, sharp and deep, each blending into something larger. It wasn't music in the usual sense. It was emotion transformed into sound, longing, love, grief, wonder. The hum was the heartbeat of everything that had ever dreamed. He closed his eyes and let it move through him. The vines recoiled, unable to cling to something so alive. The shadows formed distorted, flickering in and out of existence. Still, it laughed a sound like a dying wind. "You cannot keep the song forever. Even light must rest." "Maybe," the traveler said, "but rest isn't the same as silence." He knelt, placing his hand over the dark soil. The warmth of the garden pulsed back through his palm, a steady rhythm, ancient and kind. He began to hum again, slower this time, a softer tone that filled the space between notes. The ground answered. A thin line of light split through the soil, stretching out like the crack of dawn. The vines melted away. Flowers burst open in waves, their petals shining brighter than before. The garden's hum surged, filling the air with 1,000 voices of remembrance. And then the shadows screamed a wordless sound that shattered into dust. When it vanished, silence returned. But not the cold, heavy silence from before. This was gentle, breathing silence, the kind that follows a lullaby. Yam. The traveler sank to his knees, trembling. He was exhausted, but the garden was alive again. The hum now moved through the air like wind, soft and complete. He stayed there for what felt like hours, listening to the gentle rhythm. Every sound carried meaning, the whisper of leaves, the trickle of unseen streams, the faint sigh of the earth. It was all music, he realized. Even quiet had its melody. Then he heard footsteps, soft, almost weightless. The woman from before emerged from the silver mist. Her expression was calm but sad, as though she had seen this cycle many times. "You found the chord," she said softly. "I think it found me," the traveler replied. "I just listened," she nodded. "That is how all songs begin." He looked around. The garden glowed brighter than before, but there was something different, a faint golden hue mixing with the silver. "It's changed," he said. "It remembers," she whispered. "Each time it survives, it carries the memory of its silence. The song grows wiser." She gestured toward the lunalith tree in the distance. It now pulsed with stronger light, its branches arching toward the unseen moon. "The tree will bloom again tonight," she said, "and when it does, it will gift you what you came here to find." The traveler frowned. "I didn't come to find anything." Her smile deepened. "All travelers say that." They walked together through the winding paths. The flowers hummed softly as they passed, their melodies now gentle and balanced. The earlier chaos had given way to serenity, the kind that settles deep into the bones. As they neared the clearing, he noticed a change in the air. The scent of the blossoms was sweeter, the hum lighter. The lunolith tree was radiant silver fruit hanging like moons within its branches. The woman stepped forward and touched the bark. A soft tone rang out, like the sound of glass being brushed by wind. Each time the moonlight returns, she said, the tree offers one gift not to keep, but to understand. One of the fruits detached itself and drifted down. It landed gently in the traveler's hands, glowing faintly with a pale heartbeat of light. "What do I do with it?" he asked. "Listen again," she said. He pressed it to his ear, expecting another lullaby, another voice from memory. But this time there was silence. And in that silence, something deeper. He realized it wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken sound, the pause before a note, the breath before a word, the heartbeat before a dream. It was the essence of the garden itself. The woman watched him quietly. That is the true chord, not one of music, but of balance. Sound and silence, dream and waking, moon and shadow. One cannot live without the other. He looked down at the fruit again, understanding dawning like dawn itself. Then the silence wasn't my enemy. She shook her head. Only your reflection. They stood together beneath the luminous branches as the first traces of sunlight began to bleed through the mist. The moon's glow faded, but this time the garden did not dim. It shimmered faintly, holding its own light, the light of memory. The traveler turned to her. "What happens now?" "You leave," she said gently, "but the garden will not leave you. The hum will remain in your chest. When you walk among the waking, you will hear it again in rain against stone, in wind through leaves, in the quiet between words. You will remember." He nodded slowly, understanding what she meant. Some places you visit only once, but they never stop growing inside you. As he turned to leave, the vines at the gate parted once more, glowing softly as if bowing farewell. Before he stepped through, he looked back one last time. The woman stood beneath the lunolith tree, its light wrapping around her like silver mist. The flowers swayed gently, humming a tune that would never quite leave his memory. And when he stepped beyond the gates, the morning sun greeted him. The world looked different now, brighter, deeper, alive with hidden rhythm. The hum was still there, faint beneath the bird song, beneath the breeze. The song of the moon garden had followed him home. The road out of the moon garden was quiet, though not silent. The hum lingered not as a sound anymore, but as a rhythm that lived somewhere behind the traveler's ribs. Each step seemed to echo it, soft and steady. The dawn stretched wide and pale, spilling its gold over the distant hills. Mist clung to the ground like breath that refused to fade. The world felt newly washed, and yet the traveler sensed something deeper had shifted, as though the air itself had learned to listen. He walked for hours, the garden's silver glow fading behind him, replaced by the honest warmth of morning. The moon's memory still pulsed faintly within him, a gentle resonance guiding his direction. And then, from far ahead, he heard it faint but distinct, the murmur of running water. But this wasn't an ordinary river sound. Beneath its rush, he could hear a melody, the faint echo of the moon's lullaby. The traveler quickened his pace. The path led down a slope through fields of dew-bright grass until it opened into a valley wrapped in light fog. A silver river wound through its center, glinting like a blade under the sun. Along its banks sat a small village. Houses of pale stone and blue-tiled roofs clustered together, their chimneys puffing gentle smoke. Wooden bridges arched over the river, and water wheels turned lazily in the current. But what caught the traveler's attention most was the sound, the music woven into everything. Children's laughter carried an echoing tone. Tools struck rhythmically. Even the wind through the chimes above doorways seemed to harmonize with the river's murmur. It was as if the entire village was part of a living song. When he entered the village, heads turned. The people looked ordinary farmers, potters, millers, yet there was something luminous about them, a quiet serenity in their faces, as though they all shared an unspoken secret. An old woman sitting by the fountain lifted her gaze as he approached. Her eyes were cloudy with age, but her smile was gentle. "You've come from the garden," she said before he could speak. The traveler stopped short. "You know of it?" She nodded. "All of us here are keepers of its echoes. The river remembers what the moon forgets." Her voice trembled like soft wind through reeds. "Come, sit. You've traveled far." He joined her at the edge of the fountain. The water inside shimmered faintly, reflecting not just light, but movement shapes like petals drifting in its depths. The old woman dipped her fingers into the water. "Every drop here once passed through the moon garden," she explained. "When the moonlight wanes, the garden sends its tears to the river. They carry songs to the villages that still listen." The traveler looked toward the river again. "I can hear it," he said softly. "There's music in the water." She smiled. "Then the garden has marked you." She rose slowly, her cane clicking softly against the cobblestones. "Come, there's someone you should meet." She led him through winding alleys to a house built on the river's edge. The wooden door was carved with crescent shapes and flowing vines patterns that reminded him of the symbols in the garden soil. Inside, the air smelled of herbs and river stones. A man sat near the open window, plucking the strings of an old harp made of bone and silver thread. His hair was pale as frost, his eyes deep as dusk. When the old woman entered, he looked up and smiled faintly. "Another dreamer?" She nodded. "From the moon garden itself." The man gestured for the traveler to sit. "You can still hear the hum, can't you?" The traveler hesitated. "Yes, though it's faint, like something I might lose if I stop listening." The man nodded thoughtfully. "That's how it begins for everyone. The garden gives, but it also asks. Its song must be carried forward, or it fades." He strummed the harp once. The notes shimmered through the air like light over water. "Our river keeps that promise. It remembers the moon's melody and plays it back in every current. But lately," he paused, plucking a discordant string, "the river's song has changed." The traveler frowned. "Changed how?" The man reached into a small bowl beside him and drew out a handful of silver pebbles. They were faintly translucent, pulsing with dim light, the same soft glow as the garden's fruit. "These used to hum," he said. "Each pebble carried a fragment of the moon's song, but now they've fallen quiet. The current has grown cold." The old woman sighed. "We think the moon's voice is dimming again. Something is blocking her reflection beneath the water." The traveler's heart tightened. The shadow, he thought. Could its reach have spread this far? He looked at the man. "Is there a way to restore the song?" The man met his gaze, eyes full of knowing. "Perhaps. The answer lies beneath the river in the cavern of mirrors. It's said that deep below the current, the moon's reflection is kept alive. But if that light dims, the balance breaks." The traveler nodded slowly. "Then I'll go." The man smiled faintly. "So you are the one the garden sent." The old woman placed a hand on the traveler's shoulder. "Be careful. The cavern isn't kind to those who doubt what they hear. Down there, sound turns to memory, and memory becomes truth." He thanked her and stepped back into the sunlight. The river glittered, as if waiting. Its voice was faint but persistent, a call beneath the surface. The man followed him to the water's edge and handed him a small charm, a crystal pendant shaped like a crescent moon. "This will let you breathe below," he said, "but only as long as your heart keeps time with the song. If you lose the rhythm, the river will forget you." The traveler nodded, fastening the charm around his neck. He waded into the cool water. The moment he submerged, the hum in his chest deepened, no longer faint, but resonant, like something waking from sleep. Then, the world above disappeared. Underwater, the river glowed from within. Threads of silver light swirled around him, weaving in currents like strands of music given form. The sound here was clearer, a choral vibration that pulsed through the water like heartbeats. He drifted downward. Schools of translucent fish moved past, their bodies shimmering with faint tones. Every flick of their fins released a soft chime. The deeper he went, the darker it grew, not black, but deep indigo, the color of old dreams. Finally, the current opened into a vast cavern. It was beautiful beyond words, a cathedral made of crystal and water. The walls were covered in mirrored stone, each reflecting faint moonlight from somewhere unseen. The floor shimmered with silt that glowed faintly like stardust. At the cavern's center stood a great mirror made of still water, suspended between two pillars of quartz. Its surface trembled with light, as though the moon herself breathed through it. The traveler approached, awe softening his every step. The hum grew stronger here, but so did something else. Beneath the harmony, he could hear a low, distorted rumble, like a second voice fighting to drown the first. The silence was creeping in again. He reached the water mirror and peered into it. At first, he saw only ripples of light. Then gradually an image began to form. It was the moon garden, but dimmed. Its petals drooped, its silver rivers cracked with shadow. The lunolith tree stood pale and fading, its fruit no longer glowing. A tremor passed through the traveler's heart. "No," he whispered, "not again." From the reflection, something began to stir. A shape, faint, shifting, emerged from the mirrored water. It was not the shadow from before, but something more subtle, a reflection of himself. It smiled, cold and knowing. "Every echo fades," it said softly. "Even your song will end." The traveler stepped back, his pulse quickening. "You're not real." The reflection tilted its head. "Neither is the garden. Neither is the song. They are all what you imagined to keep the silence away." The words hit him like frost. The hum in his chest faltered. The reflection stepped forward, still half inside the mirror. "You cannot keep dreaming forever, traveler. The world above has forgotten the moon. Soon you will too." For a moment he believed it. The doubt cracked through him like thunder. The cavern darkened. The mirrored walls dulled, their light withdrawing. He felt the rhythm in his chest begin to fade. And then, a faint sound reached him. A whisper of melody, soft, trembling but real. It came from the charm at his neck. The crescent crystal pulsed gently, echoing the hum of the moon garden. The woman's voice, faint but clear, echoed in his mind. Music lives in the spaces between. Even silence has a song. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, or what passed for breath down here. Then he hummed. The note vibrated through the water, shaking the mirror's surface. His reflection's smile faltered. The traveler opened his eyes. "You're right," he said. "Everything fades. But the fading is part of the song." The reflection's form rippled, fracturing into waves of shadow. "You can't hold on to sound," it hissed. "I don't need to," he whispered. "I only need to listen." He placed his hand on the mirror's surface. Light exploded outward. The entire cavern shuddered with resonance. The mirrored walls lit up, reflecting thousands of silvery ripples that merged into one great, harmonic chord. The reflection shattered completely, dissolving into the current. The great mirror's surface smoothed again, and this time, it was no longer a reflection of the garden in decay. It showed the lunolith tree, blooming bright and whole, its branches heavy with radiant fruit. The traveler could hear the hum again, strong, complete. The river was singing. He smiled, feeling the sound pulse through his body, through his bones, through the water itself. The moon garden's melody had returned, not trapped in one place, but flowing freely, carried by every stream, every drop. He understood now. The song was never meant to stay still. It was meant to travel, to change, to live. As he reached the crest, he saw that the glowing tree was surrounded by a shallow ring of water, clear as glass, reflecting not the sky above, but the garden below. Its reflection was inverted, infinite, repeating itself into the distance. He approached carefully. Each step across the silver grass made a faint sound, as though the earth itself exhaled beneath him. The petals falling from the tree did not decay. They drifted down, touched the water's surface, and dissolved into ripples of soft tone. Each ripple carried a note, gentle, sustained, like a sigh half remembered from a dream. The traveler knelt beside the water's edge. His reflection shimmered, breaking apart into countless fragments of light. For an instant, he saw many versions of himself, each walking a different path beneath a different moon. The sight pulled a quiet ache from his chest. He didn't know if it was sorrow or wonder. Maybe both. He whispered, almost afraid to disturb the calm, "What is this place?" And the water answered, not in words, but in melody. A low hum rose, and within it, he heard voices, layers of tones that intertwined like threads in a tapestry. They sang without language, yet he understood them. They told of a time before memory, when moonlight first touched the earth, seeking to understand what it meant to feel. Where that light met soil, this garden was born. The traveler dipped his hand into the pool. It was cool, not cold, not warm, but the kind of temperature that belongs to neither day nor night. As his fingers stirred the surface, ripples spread outward. The sound shifted. He heard a lullaby, faint at first, then clear. It was the same tune his mother had once hummed when storms rattled the windows. He could almost feel her arms again, smell the sandalwood oil she used in her hair. But she was long gone. Still here, her memory breathed. He let the sound wash through him. It was gentle, endless, forgiving. In that moment, the boundaries between now and then melted away. He stayed by the tree for what felt like hours, or perhaps only moments. Time didn't behave the same way here. It moved like the tide, advancing, retreating, blending. When he finally rose, he noticed that the garden had shifted again. The colors were deeper now, richer silvers, faint blues, threads of lavender weaving through the mist. The hum around him was slower, almost sleepy. The garden itself seemed to be settling into its own rest. But one sound still stood out. A single, distinct melody came from somewhere nearby, different from the others, clearer, more intentional. It was like a voice calling softly, not in need but in invitation. He followed it. The path led him through a cluster of enormous blooms shaped like crescent moons. Each one swayed as he passed, their petals brushing lightly against his arms. They left behind trails of soft light that faded as quickly as breath. The sound grew stronger. A delicate tune played on something that was not quite an instrument. It resonated in his chest, a vibration he could feel in his ribs. He stepped into a small clearing. At its center stood a pedestal made of smooth black stone. Upon it rested a crystal bowl filled with what looked like moonlight turned liquid. The tune came from there, gentle, mesmerizing, looping endlessly as if caught between the act of beginning and ending. The traveler approached. When he leaned over the bowl, he saw not his face, but scenes unfurling in silver mist. A woman sitting beside a cradle, humming. A sailor watching the moon from a ship's deck. A scholar falling asleep over a book, candlelight fading. A dancer beneath lanterns, moving in rhythm to a drum that existed only in memory. Each vision flickered softly, vanishing like dreams at dawn. And he realized the truth. The moon garden collected what humanity forgot. The quiet moments, the small tendernesses, the unspoken songs. Here they lived again, blooming as light, humming in the dark. He touched the edge of the crystal bowl. Instantly the melody shifted, changing pitch, deepening, harmonizing with the faint echo of his heartbeat. He closed his eyes and the sound unfolded like petals opening. Within it, he heard whispers of languages long gone, prayers offered to stars, laughter shared by lovers beneath eclipses. Every sound was gentle, and yet together they carried an immeasurable weight, a collective memory of being alive. It was beautiful. It was unbearable. Tears gathered in his eyes. But here, even sorrow felt sacred. When he opened it again, the bowl had stilled. The mist inside was now calm and clear, reflecting a single image, the glowing tree on the hill behind him. But in the reflection, something new had appeared. A figure. It stood beneath the tree, its form woven from moonlight and shadow, neither man nor woman. The traveler turned quickly, but there was no one there. Only the hum, deeper now, vibrating through the garden like a slow heartbeat. He looked back at the reflection. The figure was still there, and this time it raised its hand. He felt a pull in his chest, a beckoning. The melody inside the bowl faded, leaving behind silence that seemed alive. The traveler understood. He was being invited deeper still. He walked back toward the tree, guided by the faint glow of falling petals. The air grew denser, shimmering faintly with unseen energy. The hum returned, but softer now, more personal, as though the garden itself was whispering his name. When he reached the hill again, the tree's glow had changed. Its trunk pulsed like breathing, and the air around it shimmered with faint silver dust. And then he saw her. Standing at the base of the tree was the figure from the reflection. A woman, though not entirely human. Her skin shone like moonstone. Her hair flowed like threads of starlight. Her eyes, pale and endless, held the calm of oceans before dawn. She smiled when she saw him, not in surprise, but as if she had been expecting him all along. "Traveler," she said, and her voice was a melody woven into the wind. "You have walked far through the silence. You have heard the songs of those who came before. Do you know where you stand?" He shook his head, words lost to awe. She stepped closer, and the ground glowed beneath her feet. "This garden," she said, "is not found by the living nor the dead. It blooms in the space between, a refuge for all that the world forgets. Every flower here is a memory that refused to fade." She reached out her hand, palm open. Within it, a single blossom of silver rested, trembling like a tiny star. "This," she continued, "was born from your silence. Every traveler who dreams under the moon plants a seed here without knowing. You have tended yours through longing, and so it called you home." The traveler felt warmth spread through his chest. "Home," he repeated softly. "Yes," she whispered. "Not a place of walls or time, but of remembrance. The heart knows its true home when it is quiet enough to listen." He took the flower. It pulsed faintly, mirroring the rhythm of his heartbeat. The hum around him swelled, becoming a soft chorus. Each petal of the garden shimmered in harmony. The sound rose, not loud but vast, like the universe itself singing in sleep. He felt weightless, as though the boundaries between him and the world had thinned. The woman's eyes softened. "You are ready," she said. "The keeper waits." Before he could ask what she meant, the air shimmered again. The petals lifted in a spiral, swirling around him like gentle snow made of light. The woman stepped back into the radiance of the tree, her form dissolving into its glow until only her voice remained. "Listen well, traveler. Beyond this hill lies the memory of all things. There, even silence has a story." The garden exhaled. The light dimmed. And as the last petal faded into mist, the traveler found himself standing at the edge of another path, a silver trail leading deeper into the night. The hum followed him still, faint but steady, like a promise whispered through moonlight. He took a breath, lifted his gaze, and stepped forward. The garden sang him onward. The path after the glowing hill curved like a river of light, winding through a silence so profound that even the hum of the garden became a distant murmur. The traveler followed slowly, each step soft and uncertain, as though he walked not upon ground, but upon breath itself. The air thickened with scent, not the sweet bloom of flowers this time, but something older, deeper. The smell of parchment, of rain-soaked stone, of memory itself turning into mist. The moon hung lower now, swollen with light. It cast a pale road before him, and beyond that, shadows moved slow, deliberate, graceful. He thought at first they were trees, bending in a wind he could not feel. But as he drew closer, he saw them for what they were. Tall figures woven entirely from threads of silver, their bodies shimmering like strands of spider silk in starlight. They did not walk. They drifted, their motions fluid, rhythmic, almost ceremonial. Each figure carried something, a strand of moonlight, glimmering faintly, which they offered to the air. The strands vanished as they were released, absorbed into the vast shimmer that filled the horizon. It was not chaos, it was weaving. The air itself was a loom. The traveler slowed his steps, afraid to disturb the ritual. But one of the figures turned its face toward him, a face neither human nor unkind. Its features shifted, impossible to hold in focus. It regarded him with stillness, then inclined its head, a gesture of quiet welcome. Without words, it beckoned. The traveler followed. The ground beneath him became softer, like fabric. Each step left no mark. The world dimmed to twilight, and in that dimness glowed the shape of a vast pavilion, a dome woven from pale silver threads that breathed as though alive. Within, light flickered, like candle flames seen through gauze. The hum of the garden had changed, no longer a song, but a pulse. He entered. Inside, the world folded into itself. The ceiling was endless, though it hung only a few feet above. The walls moved like tides. The air shimmered with light that was neither day nor night, but the color of in-between, that fragile hue between memory and dream. At the center sat an old woman. Her back was straight, her hair like frost and smoke combined, her hands moving in slow, deliberate rhythm. Before her was a loom unlike any he had seen. Its threads were not of silk nor fiber, but sound. Each time her fingers touched a strand, it vibrated, a faint tone rising into the air, joining others to form melodies that curled softly around her. She wove not cloth, but song. The traveler stood in silence, watching. After a moment, she spoke without lifting her gaze. "You walk softly," she said. Her voice carried the calm of rivers that have seen centuries. "Most travelers forget to." Her fingers moved again, drawing a new thread from the air. It shimmered, quivered, then joined the tapestry before her, a fabric of light and tone that seemed to pulse with life. He stepped closer, hesitant. "Are you?" He paused, unsure of what to call her. She smiled faintly. "I am what the moon remembers," she said. "Some call me the keeper of echoes, others the weaver of the quiet. It does not matter which name you use. All names dissolve here." He watched the tapestry forming before her, threads of silver, gold, pale blue, and deep indigo crossing, bending, merging. Each movement created a sound, a resonance that rippled through the air like a heartbeat. "What are you weaving?" he asked softly. She raised her head, and her eyes milky, almost translucent, fixed on him. "Nkeo, I weave what remains," she said. "Every sound that ever touched the night, every voice that ever whispered into silence, every sigh, every dream, every lullaby that the world forgot." She lifted a thread between her fingers. It glowed faintly. "This one," she murmured, "is a mother's last song to a sleeping child." Her thumb brushed the thread. The faintest hum filled the air, soft, tender, achingly human. The traveler's heart tightened. "And you keep them all?" She nodded. "They do not belong to me. I only keep them safe until they are remembered again." He looked around. The pavilion was filled with endless rolls of luminous fabric, stacked like clouds. The light from them shimmered, breathing faintly as though each roll still dreamed. He whispered, "This must take eternity." "It does," she said with no sorrow in her tone. "But time is patient here. The moon has no need to rush." Her hands moved again deftly. You see, traveler, every sound, every emotion leaves a trace, a vibration too soft for the world to hear, but not too soft for the night to keep. The moon garden gathers these traces. I weave them into remembrance. He stepped closer to the loom. The tapestry before her shifted, as if aware of his presence. Can I see? He asked. She nodded and lifted one side of the glowing fabric. Beneath its weave, he saw scenes moving faint, translucent, like light projected through water. Children running through rain, their laughter mingling with thunder. A lonely woman lighting a lantern beside a window. An old man whispering to a tree as if it were a friend. The images shimmered, then melted into one another, leaving behind only sound, the echo of life itself. The traveler felt something stir deep inside. The keeper smiled. You hear them, don't you? Yes, he whispered. It feels like I've heard them all before, though I can't remember when. That is because every soul carries a thread of the same tapestry, she said. You are never separate from what I weave. You have simply forgotten how to listen. Her hands stilled. She reached out toward him, holding a single shining strand. This one belongs to you. The thread pulsed faintly, a soft rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He took it between his fingers. It was weightless, but it vibrated with memory. What does it hold? He asked. She smiled again, eyes crinkling like paper lanterns. Touch it and see. He hesitated, then closed his eyes and brushed the thread. The world unfolded. He stood beneath a wide sky, the scent of wet earth and firewood filling the air. A younger version of himself sat beside a river, sketching the moon's reflection on paper. Somewhere behind him, someone laughed, a voice warm and familiar. A hand rested on his shoulder. A friend, a brother, someone he had lost to time. The vision shimmered. He felt the ache of it, the sweetness, the inevitability of endings. And when he opened his eyes again, the thread in his hands glowed brighter for a moment, then dimmed. The keeper nodded gently. Memories do not die. They only wait for us to remember who we were when we made them. She gestured to the tapestry before her. Every traveler brings new sound to the loom. Most come and go without knowing they've added something. You, however, came awake. That is rare. He frowned slightly. Awake? She leaned back, regarding him. Most who wander here are dreams themselves, fragments of souls resting in the moonlight. But you, she tilted her head, you still carry the breath of the living. You are a bridge between remembering and forgetting. Her tone softened. That is why you were called. The traveler's pulse quickened. Called? By what? She smiled faintly, returning her gaze to the loom. By your own silence. Her hands resumed their weaving. Silence is not emptiness, traveler. It is the space where the forgotten gathers strength. You carried silence longer than most. You listened, even when you did not understand. The moon heard you, and the garden answered. He didn't know how to respond. His throat felt tight, filled with something wordless. Every life, she continued, sings a melody. Some are loud songs of ambition, of noise and name. Others quiet the songs of kindness, of waiting, of stillness. You are one of the latter. Her voice dimmed to a whisper. And the moon keeps such songs close. The tapestry before her shimmered once more. Its light spilled over him, gentle and cool. Within it, he saw faces, countless faces, not all human, but all familiar in some way. He saw rivers turning into ribbons of sound. He saw forests breathing like lungs. He saw galaxies folding into the patterns of leaves. It was all connected. Every whisper, every hum, every breath, threads of one eternal fabric. He spoke softly. It's beautiful. The keeper smiled. Beauty is the memory of truth. Then she rose. The movement was slow but fluid, graceful despite her age. She reached behind the loom and drew forth a spool of thread unlike the others, dark, gleaming, almost black, yet shimmering faintly with silver at its edges. "This," she said, "is what has not yet been woven." The traveler frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned the spool in her hands, the thread catching faint moonlight. "It is what lies ahead, every unwoven sound, every unspoken dream. The future hums quietly here, waiting for its turn." She handed it to him. The thread felt alive, warm, trembling faintly. "You are meant to carry it," she said. "Why me?" "Because you have listened long enough to understand that silence, too, has music." He held the spool close, feeling its rhythm. It was not his heartbeat, it was slower, deeper, resonating with something older than himself. The keeper watched him with quiet affection. "When you leave this place, you will carry the echo with you. You will hear it in rain, in footsteps, in the pauses between words. Do not try to silence it. It will guide you." He looked at her, unsure if he was ready to leave. "And you?" he asked. "Do you ever rest?" Her smile was tender. "I rest in every dream that remembers me. I am in the hush of lullabies, in the pause before dawn, in the breath before forgiveness. That is enough." She turned back to her loom. "Go now, traveler. The moon waits to bloom." The traveler stepped back, bowing slightly in instinct, not a thought. The pavilion brightened briefly, then dimmed again, as if exhaling him from its presence. As he walked away, he could still hear her weaving the soft rhythm of thread and hum, the endless creation of memory. Outside, the garden awaited, glowing faintly under the swelling moon. He looked down at the spool in his hand. Its faint light pulsed in time with something far away, perhaps the heartbeat of the world itself. He closed his eyes, listening. And somewhere in that stillness, the garden whispered not in words, but in sound. It was the echo of the loom, the hum of remembrance, the song of what comes next. He smiled softly, took a breath, and continued along the moonlit path. The night had deepened into something more than darkness. It had become a presence, soft and infinite, breathing in rhythm with the traveler's own chest. He stood at the crest of the hill, where the silver tree pulsed gently like a living star, and he could sense that this was not just the garden's heart. It was its soul. Around the tree, petals drifted like falling snow, vanishing before they touched the ground. Each one whispered a single tone, faint, crystalline, unearthly. When enough fell together, they formed a sound like a sigh from the edge of time itself. The traveler whispered, almost afraid to disturb the quiet, "Is this where the moonlight begins?" No voice answered him, but the light shimmered. A ripple passed through the leaves like the faint tremor of a harp string. And then, something began to take shape. At first, it looked like vapor caught in the tree's glow, then it thickened, curved and shimmered into the outline of a figure. A woman, tall and calm, cloaked in robes woven from light and shadow. Her hair shimmered like silk made of moonbeams, and her eyes reflected galaxies soft, endless, and ancient. The traveler froze. She smiled faintly. "You've come far," she said, her voice neither young nor old, but deep, echoing softly through the hum of the blossoms. "Few have walked the garden and remembered to breathe." He blinked, unsure how to respond. "You? Are you the one who made this place?" "I am its keeper," she said simply, "but the garden was born long before me. I only listened to its song." She turned toward the tree, and the petals around her began to hum in harmony. The melody richer now, 1,000 soft notes rising like mist. "The moon garden," she continued, "was once a dream of silence. When the moon first saw the sorrow of the sleeping world, the tears that no one saw, the songs that no one sang, it wept. And from those tears, the first flowers grew." Her hand brushed a nearby blossom, and the sound it made was so pure the traveler's eyes stung. "The garden gathers what the world forgets." The lullabies unsung, the hopes unspoken, the light that never reached its home, all come here and bloom. He felt his throat tighten. That's why they hum. They're singing the songs of others. Yes, she said. Every sound you hear is a fragment of a soul at rest. A lullaby that once calmed a child. A promise whispered at dusk. Even a sigh that carried love into the night. The traveler stepped closer. Then, why am I here? I don't remember being called. She studied him, eyes reflecting faint ripples of silver. Everyone who arrives is called, she said softly. The question is not why you came, but what you carry. He frowned. I don't, but the words faltered. Something in her gaze made him remember the feeling that had driven him to wander, a quiet ache he never spoke aloud. A longing that never quite left. He had traveled across deserts, through storms, beneath endless stars, always chasing something unnamed. And now, standing beneath the moon's living tree, he realized what it was. I was looking for peace, he whispered. The keeper smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. Peace cannot be found, she said, only remembered. She gestured for him to sit beside her beneath the silver canopy. As he did, the hum of the blossoms softened, as though the entire garden leaned closer to listen. There is a song, she said, that every traveler carries within. Some forget the words, some forget the tune, but the garden knows it. That is why it called you. He stared at his hands. I don't think I have a song. She tilted her head slightly, her expression calm but luminous. Then close your eyes, she said, and listen. He obeyed. At first there was nothing, only the faint hum of the flowers, the slow rustle of leaves. But beneath that, a pulse began. A rhythm faint as a heartbeat echoing across time. Then came a sound, not a melody, but a single note, fragile and trembling. It felt familiar. It felt his. Images flickered behind his eyelids. A lamp burning low on a wooden desk. A letter never sent. A child's laughter fading into the night. A promise he once made under the stars. I'll come back. The note trembled, then broke, spilling into silence. When he opened his eyes, tears shimmered on his lashes. The keeper's gaze was soft, patient. There, she said. Do you hear it now? He nodded slowly. It was mine. Yes, she said. Your song never left you. You only stopped listening. The garden began to change around them. The air thickened with silver light, and the petals above started to drift in slow spirals. Each petal's glow deepened as it fell, until the entire grove looked as if it were raining moonfire. The traveler felt warmth flood through him, not from heat, but from remembrance. He had thought of peace as stillness, a silence without thought or motion. But now, sitting within the breathing heart of the moon garden, he understood. Peace wasn't still. It was alive, a pulse, a hum, a continuous unfolding. He looked at the keeper. What happens to the songs that fade completely? She looked toward the distance where the light met shadow. They never fade, she said. They return to the moon, and from there become stars. The traveler smiled faintly. Then this whole sky must be full of forgotten music. Her gaze lifted upward. Yes, she whispered. Every night, the stars sing to those who have forgotten how. A long silence followed, not empty, but full of quiet energy. The hum of the flowers changed again, now lower, slower, carrying the rhythm of waves. The keeper reached into the air, her hand passing through a stream of drifting petals. As they brushed her skin, each one flared with light, revealing a faint image. Faces, laughter, small fragments of humanity glimmering for a heartbeat before fading. These are your kin, she said. Every traveler leaves behind echoes. Some call them memories, some call them dreams, but here they grow. He watched, awestruck. You keep them all? I tend to them, she replied, as one tends to stars. Each must be allowed to shine in its own way. For a time, neither spoke. The night stretched like silk around them, soft and endless. Then the keeper turned to him again. There is something else you must see. She rose, her motions smooth as drifting water, and gestured for him to follow. The petals that touched her feet flared briefly, marking a faint path of light. He followed her through an archway of glowing vines that hummed with low tones, almost like distant thunder wrapped in velvet. Beyond it lay a vast pool of liquid silver, still as glass, wide as a small lake. The reflection it held was not the sky, but the moon itself, suspended just beneath the surface. This, she said softly, is the mirror of sleep. The traveler's voice dropped to a whisper. It looks alive. It is, she said. This is where the garden dreams. Every petal, every song, every hum all begin and end here. If you listen, you can hear the moon breathe. He stepped closer, kneeling beside the edge. The reflection shimmered, rippling faintly. For a heartbeat, he saw himself, then the image shifted. He saw a younger version of himself standing on a cliff under a wide, bright sky. Then another older, eyes full of longing. Then another smiling, holding someone's hand he couldn't quite remember. Each vision flickered in rhythm with the hum of the garden. He whispered, "Are these all me?" "Yes," said the keeper. "Every moment you've lived still sings within you. You are not one person, traveler. You are a choir of selves, all humming the same eternal song." The water glowed brighter. The reflection of the moon seemed to draw closer, as though rising to meet him. "Touch it," said the keeper. He hesitated, then reached forward. The surface rippled under his fingertips, cool and soft like silk soaked in starlight. Instantly, a current of sound flooded through him. Whispers, songs, laughter, tears, thousands of voices rising at once, then folding back into one steady hum. He gasped. It wasn't chaotic, it was symphony. He understood now the moon garden didn't separate sorrow from joy, or endings from beginnings. It wove them together. Each life, each dream, each forgotten lullaby, all became threads in a single eternal melody. When he withdrew his hand, the silver ripples settled, leaving only his reflection behind. But something had changed. The light of the garden now pulsed faintly beneath his skin. His heartbeat and the garden's hum had merged into one. The keeper watched quietly. "You have listened," she said, "and the garden has answered." He looked down at his hands, trembling. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, "you carry it now. Wherever you walk, the hum will follow. You will not lose the sound again." He felt both humbled and afraid. "Why me?" Her eyes softened. "Because the moon always chooses the listener, not the singer." They stood in silence for a long while. The petals above shimmered like tiny constellations. The silver pool stilled completely. Finally, she spoke again, a whisper almost lost to the air. "The night is not endless, traveler. When the dawn comes, the garden will fade. You must decide what you will do when it does." He turned to her. "What happens when it fades?" "The hum will remain," she said, "but only if you remember it. Only if you carry its peace into the waking world." He felt the ache rise in his chest again, but softer now, gentler. "And if I forget," she smiled sadly, "then the garden will call you again someday, in another dream." He looked toward the horizon. Already faint silver light had begun to shift, thinning, paling. The petals dimmed. The song quieted. The garden was preparing to rest. The traveler turned back to the keeper. "Will I see you again?" She reached out, placing her cool, luminous hand against his heart. "Every time you listen," she said, "I will answer." Then she stepped backward into the silver light, her form dissolving like mist. The hum rose once more, deep, resonant, filling the air like the final note of an endless lullaby. And then there was only stillness. When the traveler opened his eyes again, he was lying beneath a pale morning sky. The hill was gone. The flowers were gone. But the scent, soft, lunar, familiar, lingered. He sat up slowly. Dew sparkled around him like fallen stars. For a moment, he thought he could hear it faint, far away, the hum of the garden, the breath of the moon. He smiled, not because the sound faded, but because he knew it was still there, waiting, always listening. He whispered to the dawn, "Thank you for letting me remember." And as the first sunlight touched the horizon, the faintest echo answered back. A single tender note, soft as a sigh, carried on the wind. The morning was pale, almost colorless, as though dawn had forgotten how to rise. The traveler sat among soft grasses that glimmered faintly with dew, and though the hum of the garden was gone, silence did not feel empty. It felt full of echoes, of whispers still unfolding in his chest. He touched the ground beside him. It was cool, firm, real, yet when he brushed away the dew, a faint shimmer pulsed beneath his fingertips, fading quickly, like moonlight trying to cling to the day. For a long moment, he simply sat there, listening to the quiet earth breathe. There was no wind, no bird song, just stillness. But within that stillness, something stirred a memory that wasn't quite thought, a rhythm, faint but steady, beating in his chest like a distant drum. The hum, the garden song. It hadn't vanished after all. It had become part of him, the pulse beneath his heartbeat, the shimmer behind his sight. He rose slowly, the weight of the dawn pressing softly on his shoulders, and looked around. The landscape had changed. Where once had been glowing blossoms, now stretched an endless plain of pale wildflowers. Their petals were thin and ghost-like, as though the moon had brushed them in its sleep. And above the sky was no longer black or blue, but a strange, translucent silver, still holding the afterglow of stars that refused to fade. It was the hour between night and day, that fragile hinge of time when the world forgets which side it belongs to. And somehow the traveler knew he was still between worlds, neither awake nor dreaming, neither lost nor found. When he began to walk, his footsteps left no mark, only ripples of faint light that faded quickly. Each step felt guided, though he didn't know by what. Perhaps the rhythm within him, that silent hum that had replaced fear with calm. The plain stretched endlessly, but there was no fatigue. The air was light and cool, brushing against his skin like the breath of a sleeping creature. He passed what looked like fragments of the garden, a single glowing vine curling around a stone. A petal caught midair, refusing to fall. A faint shimmer, as if the ground remembered where music had once been. He realized the moon garden had not disappeared. It had merged with the world. Its beauty was now scattered, hidden in fragments, like secret seeds waiting to bloom wherever the quiet lingered. Hours might have passed, or only moments. Time here had dissolved into rhythm. Eventually, he saw something in the distance, a figure. Small at first, like a trick of the eye, then clearer. It stood at the edge of the horizon, still, waiting. He walked toward it, each step pulling him deeper into the shimmer of the dawn. As he drew nearer, he saw that the figure was a child, barefoot, dressed in soft linen that shimmered faintly with the same hue as the moonlight. The child's hair was silver blonde, eyes wide and bright, and though young, there was something impossibly ancient in their expression. The traveler stopped, uncertain. "Who are you?" The child smiled, tilting their head slightly. "You've forgotten already?" The voice was like wind moving through reeds, gentle, familiar. He frowned. "I don't think we've met." The child took a step closer. "You met me long ago," they said, "before you learned how to forget." The traveler hesitated, words catching in his throat. There was something in the way the child's eyes shimmered, that same quiet glow he'd seen in the mirror of sleep. "You're," he began. The child nodded. A dream you once had, they said softly. The first dream you ever carried into waking. The traveler's heart stilled. I don't remember. That's why I'm here, said the child. To remind you. They turned, pointing toward the horizon where the pale light was beginning to deepen into gold. Do you see that line? He nodded. The edge of the world? The child smiled. No, it's the seam, where night and day are stitched together. You're standing on the thread. He looked again, and yes, he saw it now. The light didn't simply brighten toward dawn, it wove. Silver bled into gold, shadow into glow, the two interlacing like silk threads in an invisible hand. What happens if I cross it? He asked quietly. The child's voice grew softer. You'll wake, and the song will fade, unless you learn to listen while awake. He lowered his gaze. The keeper said the same. The child nodded. She tends the dreams that sleep, but I tend the ones that try to live. The traveler's brow furrowed. Are you saying the garden can live in the waking world? Not as it was, the child said, but as a memory that grows, when you speak kindly, when you pause to breathe, when you listen to someone's silence. That's where the flowers hum again. A breeze passed between them, carrying the faintest trace of melody so fragile it might have been imagined. The child smiled faintly. The hum is everywhere. You only hear it when you stop trying to listen. He wanted to ask more, but the words faltered. There was something about the child that made him ache not with sorrow but recognition. Like seeing his own reflection from long ago. Are you me? He whispered. The child tilted their head again. I am what you left behind when you began to rush. The traveler's breath caught. He remembered the boy on the rooftop, the one who reached for the moon with flower-dusted hands. He remembered the laughter, the wonder, the simplicity of just being. You, he whispered. You were in the memory the flower showed me. The child's smile widened, soft and luminous. You see, you didn't lose the memory. You only misplaced it. The traveler's throat tightened. Why show yourself now? Because the garden gave you its song, the child said. Now you must carry it home. He stared at them. Home. The word felt strange on his tongue, like something sacred and long forgotten. I don't even know where that is anymore. The child reached out, placing a small hand over his heart. It's here, they whispered. Home is wherever you remember to listen. The horizon brightened. The thread between night and day began to hum, vibrating with energy. He felt the pull again, that same gentle tug he had felt under the silver tree. The child stepped back. It's time, they said. The traveler hesitated. Will I forget all of this when I cross? The child looked at him with eyes so knowing it hurt. You'll forget the form, not the feeling, the words, not the rhythm. But if you hum softly to yourself when the world grows too loud, you'll find it again. He wanted to say something, to thank them, to hold on, but the light grew too bright. The horizon flared like liquid gold. The child's voice was the last thing he heard before the light swallowed everything. Don't be afraid of waking, they whispered. Dreams never end. They only change their shape. Then silence. Not the garden silence, full and humming, but the still silence of morning. When the traveler opened his eyes again, he was lying on a quiet path of dust and wildflowers. Real flowers. Soft pinks, faint yellows, gentle whites. No glow, no hum, but their scent was warm and alive. He sat up slowly, sunlight painting his hands gold. The world around him was familiar, a countryside he might have crossed long ago. Trees whispered gently in the distance. Somewhere, water trickled over stones. He touched the ground firm, warm. The hum was gone. And yet, beneath the bird's song, beneath the rustle of wind, he thought he could almost hear it. A faint vibration, deep in the chest. Not sound, exactly feeling. He closed his eyes. The wind brushed his face. The warmth of the sun touched his brow. And faintly, faintly, like memory rising from the edge of sleep, came a tone. Soft, steady, familiar. He smiled. The moon garden had not vanished. It had only changed its voice. He walked, slowly, quietly, without hurry. The world felt new, yet ancient, as though seen for the first time. He passed a river. The water shimmered with sunlight, but in the ripples he saw something more, faint glimmers of silver, like echoes of the moon's reflection. He paused, kneeling, and dipped his hand into the current. The water was cool, soothing. When he lifted his hand, droplets slid down his fingers, catching the light, and for a breathless moment they glowed faintly. He laughed softly. The world, he realized, still remembered. He walked on, following no road, no map, just the rhythm in his chest. Now and then he met others, a shepherd guiding his flock, a woman carrying water, children playing in the dust. To each he smiled. To each he offered a kind word. And in their eyes, for the briefest instant, he saw it, a flicker of silver, a soft hum of recognition. The garden was not gone. It had taken root in every heart that listened. He remembered what the keeper had said. You will carry it now. Wherever you walk, the hum will follow. And she had been right. It wasn't something he had to protect or preserve. It was something he had to live. As the day wore on, the hum softened, not fading, but blending. The laughter of children became melody. The whisper of leaves became harmony. The beat of his footsteps became rhythm. He was no longer a traveler searching for peace. He was a bearer of its song. And wherever he passed, something subtle changed. A tired face softened. A restless breeze stilled. A bird paused mid-flight, as if remembering a forgotten tune. The garden had not left him. It had followed him into the waking world, quiet and unseen, blooming wherever kindness lingered long enough to listen. The silver moon trembled as if holding its breath. Lysander stood before the grand mirror at the center of the moon garden, a still lake that shimmered with quiet anticipation. Around him, the flowers had turned their faces upward, glowing faintly, their hums like whispered prayers. The traveler could feel the weight of every chapter he had lived pressing softly against his heart. The first wonder, the second sorrow, the third revelation, the fourth love, the fifth truth. Now only this moment remained the return. The air shimmered. From the horizon of the lake rose a single thread of moonlight, twisting slowly upward like a living ribbon. It danced between his hands, pulsing with faint warmth. He felt it, the moon's heartbeat, gentle and slow as though it had been asleep for ages. He heard a voice then, the same soft tone that had guided him through dreams. The garden remembers you, traveler. It was not one voice, but many, the flowers, the wind, the echoes of all who had wandered here before. Lysander whispered, "Then it knows I came back." The moonlight trembled in response. It felt almost joyful. The surface of the lake rippled, and for the first time he saw beneath it a world mirrored in silver. There were ruins made of glass, trees that shimmered with starlight, and beings of light moving slowly through the water. They were tending to something, shapes that looked like seeds, glowing softly in their palms. He realized with awe that this reflection was not a mere illusion. It was the heart of the garden, the dream beneath the waking world. As he watched, one of the beings looked up, meeting his eyes through the surface. Its form was vaguely human, though its edges were fluid, made of shifting light. It smiled faintly, a sad, knowing smile, and placed his hand upon the inside of the mirrored surface. Without thinking, Lysander mirrored the gesture. His fingers met cool water, and for an instant, his reflection came alive. The being's voice echoed through his mind. "We are the echoes of what once was. We tended the moon's bloom when it still sang freely. But when the dreamers forgot us, we faded into memory." Lysander felt sorrow rise in his chest, the ache of worlds forgotten by time. "Can you return?" he asked softly. The being shook its head. "We are memory, nothing more." but the light remembers how to be reborn. The lake began to swirl, and the being's image dissolved into ribbons of luminescence that spiraled upward into the moonlight thread Lysander held. The voice whispered, "Plant us again, traveler. Let the garden awaken." He knelt by the lake's edge, the moon thread coiled in his hands like living silk. The ground beneath him pulsed faintly soft, warm, alive. As he pressed the light into the soil, the earth exhaled a soft note, a hum so pure it sent ripples through the stars above. The garden responded. Petals unfurled from unseen buds, and waves of moonlight washed through the trees. The flowers that had fallen silent began to hum once more, at first faintly, then with swelling harmony. The lullaby rose like a tide. He could feel it in his bones, the music of restoration. As he pressed his palm deeper into the earth, visions began to bloom behind his eyes. He saw the first dreamers who had created this place, celestial gardeners, with hands made of starlight, weaving night and light together. He saw them crafting the moon garden, not as a place, but as a promise of refuge for all souls lost in darkness. He saw, too, their fading when humanity turned away from wonder, when dreams grew noisy and restless. The moon's voice had dimmed, and the garden had gone to sleep, waiting for someone to remember. And now, he was that someone. Lysander whispered, "Wake, beautiful dream." The ground glowed. The hum became a song, and for the first time since ancient time itself, the moon garden breathed. But as the song rose higher, so did something else, a trembling, like the sky itself was about to break. The lake's surface rippled violently. Reflections began to fracture. The mirrored sky split into threads of silver light. The moon above flickered, its glow sputtering like a candle in the wind. He realized what was happening. The dream was bleeding into reality. The barrier between worlds was dissolving. The garden, in waking, was returning all its magic to the night sky, and it would take him with it. The flowers began to lift from the soil, their roots unraveling into starlight. The humming grew frantic. Lysander tried to steady himself, but his body felt weightless, dissolving at the edges. His reflection shimmered on the surface of the lake, fading. He called out, "Wait, I can't leave them yet." From the chaos came a familiar form, the Lady of Moonlight. Her presence was calm amid the storm, her gown now woven entirely of living light. "You've done what no one else could," she said softly. "The garden remembers its song, but now it must return to the sky." "Then let me go with it," Lysander whispered. "Let me see it reborn." Her smile was tender, sorrowful. To go with it is to cease being what you are. You would no longer walk among the living. He hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Then so be it. I have walked long enough." The lady touched his brow, and light poured through him, not painful, but liberating. He felt his body dissolve like mist, every fear, every ache, every memory lifting like petals into the air. "You are not ending," she said, her voice fading like wind through leaves. "You are becoming the dream." The last thing Lysander saw before he became light was the moon itself, no longer dim, but blazing with silver fire. It bloomed. Yes, bloomed. The moon opened like a flower, its surface peeling into radiant petals that spread across the night. Streams of moonlight poured down upon the earth, and for one miraculous hour, every creature that looked up felt peace wash over them, deep, luminous peace. Dreams that night were gentle, restless minds stilled. The world sighed in relief, and in that silence, the moon garden's lullaby hummed softly through every sleeping soul. When the sun rose, the world was subtly changed. The moon garden itself had vanished, or so it seemed. Where it once lay, there was only an empty field of dew-kissed grass and faintly glowing mist. Yet if one listened closely, there was a soft hum still lingering in the air, a remnant of moonlight not quite gone. In a small village miles away, a child woke before dawn, drawn to the window by the feeling of something wonderful. She pressed her tiny hand against the glass and saw, for a fleeting moment, a single glowing flower bloom in the morning light silver, delicate and humming softly. She smiled, not knowing why tears filled her eyes. The moonlight had chosen new soil. Far beyond mortal sight, in the realm of the moon, a new garden unfurled, vast, shimmering, alive. It was filled with the songs of every dream ever dreamt, tended by the light of those who had once walked beneath the stars. Among them was a new presence, Lysander, the traveler, now luminous and free. He walked barefoot among silver grass that hummed beneath his steps. The Lady of Moonlight stood nearby, her expression serene. "Do you remember who you were?" she asked. He thought for a long moment, then smiled. "I remember who I became." She nodded approvingly. "Then you understand. The garden is not a place to find, but a promise to fulfill." He looked out over the vast expanse of light, the flowers, the lakes, the mirrored skies, and he understood. The moon garden was eternal because it lived wherever someone still believed in peace, in wonder, in the gentle song of night. Some nights when the moon is full and its light feels unusually alive, those who listen carefully claim to hear it a faint hum, like the sound of flowers singing in their sleep. They say it soothes restless hearts, comforts the lonely, and reminds dreamers that somewhere beyond the veil of waking, the moon garden still blossoms. And if one follows that hum not with footsteps, but with faith, they may find themselves walking, just for a moment, in a place between worlds, where moonlight grows wild and dreams breathe softly through silver leaves. There, at the center of it all, stands a man of light, smiling faintly as he tends to the flowers. He hums quietly the same tune that began it all. The garden hums with him, and the moon, luminous and eternal, listens. In many ancient tales, the moon represents rebirth, the cycle of endings and new beginnings. The moon garden, in its final bloom, reflects the eternal rhythm of life, creation, decay, memory, and renewal. Lysander's transformation is not death, but transcendence, a return to harmony with what he sought all along. He becomes part of the story he once followed, much like myths where mortals ascend to join the divine, as stars, spirits, or dreams. The garden's music symbolizes peace, something that cannot be owned, only shared. When the moon blooms, its light touches every soul equally, a universal reminder of the quiet beauty that lives beyond fear and time. And perhaps that is the truest dream of all, that even when forgotten, wonder always finds its way home. Thank you for wandering through the moon garden tonight. May your dreams be calm, your heart light, and your sleep deep beneath the silver glow. If this story brought you peace, let the moonlight guide you back here again. Until next time, dream softly and good night.